Okay, so PlayStation 5 Pro is happening. Pre-orders happened this week. I think we've all got pre-orders pre-ordered in
Oh
case,
yeah.
well, we always
Pre-order,
pre-order
pre-order.
hardware because there's no obligation whatsoever for Sony to actually give us hardware. It's not as if we have a God-given right to it. But even so, some news this week. Now, we're going to be talking about John's trip to Japan bit later on, but at TGS, Tokyo Game Show, John, you did actually play the PlayStation 5 Pro. You've seen it. You've seen what it has to offer.
Hmm.
And I've seen it now. Tom Morgan's seen it. Actually, pretty much everyone on the team has seen it except you, Alex.
Hmm.
But I'm curious what your takeaway is, John.
Yeah, I gotta say, in person, the end result was more impressive than I expected, I guess you could say. Now, this
Yeah.
being TGS, the actual game selection I had access to was more limited. Basically, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Gran Turismo 7 were both shown on the system. Rebirth, I famously tweeted about its image quality being a huge leap, and it was actually even larger than I anticipated. It genuinely
Right.
looks like it's game changing in terms of that because, you know, as I think we famously or not so covered back when the game was released, is that image quality was not very good in this game compared to other competing titles and what we typically see these days. It was a lot blurrier and just like lacking detail than we were used to seeing, especially in the performance mode. So much so that Square had to react to the feedback from the demo of people complaining and added another mode, which just ended up being nearest neighbor upscaling of the lower res source instead of bilinear scaling. So, or linear scaling. So that was weird. But in the demo, they allowed you to switch between the linear scaled performance mode and the new PSSR mode. And it was like lifting a veil of like smear and blur. And sitting close, I think I was using like a 42-inch screen, similar to my monitor here, sitting very close to it. So, I could very much pixel peep as much as I pleased, and it just straight up looked like a clean 4K presentation now. Very, very, very sharp. All the various like sparkling aliasing issues, the blur, everything was just lifted away, and you could just see much further into the distance with full clarity, and it ran great at 60 FPS. So right away, that made a big difference in terms of just making the game far more presentable. Now, could they have done better in the first place on the regular base PS4? I tend to think so, yeah. But this is more just a case of seeing what PSSR can do over some of the more standard techniques. I think FF7R just uses like a normal TAA with like a basic regular upscale, a spatial upscale, nothing fancy, no reconstruction. This is obviously reconstruction. So
Right.
then there was Gran Turismo 7, and that they only had the 4K ray tracing mode available on display. They did not have an 8K screen there, unfortunately, so I couldn't see that mode in action. Although I actually asked about the 8K mode, whether you'd be able to downsample it to 4K, and they said not currently, no. And I tried to convince them that that's a
Oh,
good idea. You should do it. And I think they will look into that. But for now, it's like it only engages if your display is set to 8K. So basically, I wanted to see if I could check out the downsampled 8K mode on this 4K screen, and that was a no-go. It's not supported. But the 4K mode does indeed have the ray tracing, and as I pointed out from that initial footage, the internal resolution has been dropped, and they rely on PSSR to get up to 4K. And in person, it looked a lot more convincing to my eye than it did when pixel peeping the ProRes videos somehow. Uh, I thought it looked very, very sharp. It was a very clean presentation suddenly. And seeing the game running at 60 FPS with the ray traced reflections, which obviously, due to the internal res being a little lower, reflection quality takes a minor hit, as we know. But it's very convincing, and I would say far more convincing than what we saw in the PC updates for, or I guess even on console, the ray traced reflections in Forza, basically, which are extremely limited and not great. Here
right.
you get basically, aside from the resolution, the quality is basically on par with what you see in the replays, previously in the game, which means the roughness cutoff is set to such a point that even very rough materials actually show RT reflections. And cars have a lot of those with various plastics. It's a mix of things on a car. And having the reflections be consistent across the body in that way, driving, I found it quite pleasing. The default, I was able to choose different cars, but the default car they had selected was like a giant, like mini bus. So it's like a giant flat bus with a ton of variable roughness surfaces from the glass, the paint, the plastic bottoms. So like it ended up being a great demonstration of seeing the environment and other cars reflecting on your car when using the third person camera, which was cool. So, GT7's already a gorgeous looking game, and just adding this in really pushes it up. And it's exactly what I think we had hoped to see. We've talked about this many times. It's like just getting those real-time ray trace reflections actually in the game is awesome. And of course, the other benefit here is that you can, in the replays now, you get ray traced reflections at 60 FPS. Whereas obviously in the base PS4 version, it was 30 FPS capped, but it could drop below 30 points. Whereas here now you get full 60 FPS replays with the ray traced reflections. So the whole game across the board now can just be 60 with RT, and that's it. And I think that's awesome.
Cool.
It's just standardized.
That's cool.
So yeah, impressions were positive, and seeing the unit in person as well. I think it does look better than the regular PS4, just like the Slim does as well. They don't really, it's hard to tell from photographs, but when you actually see it in person, it is less bulbous somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the original
you
is
have the advantage over me here, John, because I haven't seen the actual unit. I have seen the dev kit now, and as expected, it's identical to the existing PlayStation 5 dev kit. You can't tell the difference. Well, what can I say? It is a case where I think you do have to get the full effect. Obviously, you need to see it. It's the same with anything. I mean,
Sure.
You can only go so far with a limited media playback system like YouTube. And I'm kind of thinking, a lot of people are saying I'm not seeing any difference, etc., etc. That's kind of not the fault of the software in many ways. I mean, there's a reason you have to do zooms and stuff to actually highlight the differences between stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people watching our videos are doing so on 5 to 7 inch mobile devices.
Exactly.
So, those are the sort of challenges. When you're actually sitting there with the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's clearly a superior device to the base PlayStation 5. Actually, it brings up this question from Leftist Hominid. When a multi-plat PC port is broken and I really want to play the game, I will play it on consoles. With the arrival of PSSR on the PS5 Pro, how likely is it that developers will stop using a horrible FSR upscaling on that platform? I think I hate FSR more than Rich hates the Master System. Whoa, hold on a minute. Let's stop.
Whoa.
Broken PC ports are one of my motivations to buy a PS5 Pro. Well, I'm curious about your thoughts on that, Alex, but I do think that there's no real need to use FSR on PlayStation 5 Pro.
Absolutely not.
Titles.
No, I don't think so. There is, I mean, unless there proves to be something really wrong with PSSR, which I doubt, everyone should be looking to do it, unless performance is maybe like 120 hertz mode, they wouldn't maybe use it, or like some sort of weird scaling, because it has a cost, and that's the only reason why I think they would use other things like TAAU or FSR2. So like, I don't want to say like every dev's going to use it. I want to be a little bit more realistic than that. But I think it should be superseding FSR2, which is why they made it in the first place. It is always a shame that Sony can't just slag on FSR2 in a video and show how PSSR is better. I think that would sell. It would sell better probably than having to show off what they've shown off before. But regardless of that, I think that is a good, if you're looking to avoid really bad multi-platform releases on PC. And I would say it's mainly the ones that have PSO stutter. Those are usually the ones where I would also argue that you can get a technically smoother experience on console if it's just chock full of PSO stutter. And in which case the Pro would be the better place to play. presuming the frame rate holds up there. And just expensive though, obviously.
It's just
Well,
price.
exactly, yeah. It's a nuclear option, really, to actually spend $700 on a console because maybe your $1,500 PC
or more
is having issues. Has those issues.
Just last thing, it's also, I mean, not buying the game on PC and then rewarding the console version is also a little weird. I would rather like you get like really angry on Twitter or something. I don't know how to explain it, but like you just can't accept. It would be great if there was more audience, I don't know, anger or directed.
We don't need more anger today, Alex.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know what the word is, but just like some way consumers could make it really well known that it's not really acceptable to release PC games the way they are released.
Constructive criticism.
Yes.
Sure.
So one more thing though about the Pro is I also asked the Sony people there about, and it says expected the VRR stuff. VRR was not enabled on any of the demos, and I actually asked, do they have any intention of changing the way VRR works, basically to allow lower frame rate compensation? And what do you think they said?
No comment.
No, they did comment. It's just like, no, like currently.
No.
It could actually. They did not rule it out. It's just that currently the PS5 Pro makes no changes to the way that works. But they did indicate that they've heard us talk about this many times and have taken the feedback on the nose. So we'll see if that eventually changes. And if it does change, I'd imagine it would even apply to the base PS5. So we'll see.
Yes.
I sure hope it does. I hope if you guys are watching this, please consider updating the way VRR works. So, but yeah, I think the problem there is just the 60 hertz output thing, right? Because you can't really do LFC very well at 60 hertz. You need to force the system into 120 hertz mode, basically. So that also relies on the developer versus Xbox, where it's like a system-wide setting.